It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning, Jocelyn Ford Keel. I just learned this morning that she's an East High graduate and was just 1 year behind my daughter there. And we have some other people in the congregation that know her as well from that time. Jocelyn is an amazing vocalist, among many other things. She started singing when she was 2. Her first solo was when she was 2 at New Hope Baptist Church. She graduated from Fisk University and was part of the Jubilee Singers there. She was also asked to do a residency here at our Dazzle Jazz Club because of her profoundly moving story. Many here at Moffyu know her from singing at both services, the 8:30 and the 11. She'll join us today, again, for the 11. And she also sang the lead in the concert we did, the Duke Ellington Jazz Sacred Music Concert. If you saw that, you know who she is. She's just an amazing person as well as a vocalist. She has a new album coming or out. Is it out? It's coming. We're thrilled to have her today. Please help me in welcoming Jocelyn.
Well, good morning. It's good to be at home. I feel at home here at Montview. I am kind of gobsmacked that I was asked to do this. People often just ask me to do musical things, and I guess this is music adjacent. But to talk about my journey and how my spirituality informs my art, and the levels of that. There are tiers, but there's also the evolution of my faith and how that is displayed in my art. And so I'm gonna explore some of those themes, and I am an educator, so I have no problem with you raising your hand if there's a question right in that moment. Can you hear me?
If they have questions.
And there's a mic. Kate just let me know. See, I told you I'm at home. I know everybody. So I am gonna try not to be stuck to this outline that I've done, but I am a little more nervous when it comes to speaking than I am to singing. You know, my vocation has always been vocalizing melodically. But I do want to say thank you. Thank you to I always want to say the adult ed department, but the adult faith formation. I love that. There's so much you can do with that, and we definitely need to continue to form and reform our faith as we grow in grace. And so this is meaningful, not just because it's Black History Month, but because there's a lot going on in the world. A lot of stories from people who look like me, who have experiences like me, and our predecessors are being stifled, burned, banned, all of the things. And so I am most certainly grateful for the opportunity to share my story and dig into how race has impacted my lens spiritually. And so, yes, I am Jocelyn Ford Keel. I am a native of Denver, Colorado. And I believe that, yeah, right? Because who is anymore? I did notice that all four singers, you see, I'm always going back to singing. All 4 speakers this month are Denver natives. We all were born here. Isn't that amazing? So I grew up in the Black church tradition, but I also grew up in what would now be called the worship arts tradition. My mother is a choir director, and I grew up at New Hope Baptist Church. And at a very young age, some of the choir members will remember me sharing this story. At a very, very young age, I was told that I would be the next minister of music at New Hope, and I was excited. I said, yes. I didn't even know what that meant, but I was really excited. And so when the very first woman minister of music came to fruition at New Hope, shortly thereafter, she resigned and had to move, and in comes Daryl J. Walker as her replacement. And my mother's an educator. I took one of her red pencils and I wrote out a note to Mr. Walker, a very strongly worded letter for a 9-year-old, you know. Dear Mr. Walker, I am the next minister of music at New Hope Baptist Church. Love, Jocelyn. And he, of course, that was funny, you know, and he read it to the choir, and I was like, exactly, I'm glad everybody understands what's going on here. But he didn't just laugh at me. He took me under his wing and really empowered me to be a musical leader. And so he inherited a music department that we had an orchestra. We had a choir that sang mostly anthems. We had a choir, in that choir they also sang Negro spirituals, you know, like John work, arrangements of Negro spirituals, Jester Harrison, those kinds of arrangements. And then we had a younger choir that sang all of the popular gospel, contemporary, you know, the fun stuff, you know, that all the kids were doing. And then, of course, we had the children and the youth, the men, the women, and then a combined choir. And so when Daryl came in, he said, yeah, this is just too many choirs. We're going to have one choir, and this one choir will sing all of these things. And so I grew up in a church that maybe for the first selection, we would sing an anthem. We do the Randall Thompson Alleluia, perhaps. And then for the next selection, we were doing some Kirk Franklin or John P. Key or something that was more choir and more, I don't know, popular, upbeat, the things that really drew in my age group. And in that, it prepared me to go out and be a part of other groups that were either doing one or the other. And I didn't understand why there was just the one thing. So I'm going to put a pin in that as far as musical involvement with the church. I'm also the child of a jazz musician. If he's watching, I'm sure he's probably watching. I'm sorry I called you a jazz musician, Dad, because he is classically trained. He really rejects titles, and I'm kind of like that because I'm just making music. You know, the labels and what have you are unnecessary. I'm just making music. I'm just having this conversation musically. And so I mentioned that it was jazz because that is, you know, that helps to inform you what type of music or what sounds I was absorbing as a child. When I was born, we lived in a 2-bedroom home. And my father's studio was what was or should have been the dining room. I had no idea that that's what that was. It wasn't until years later I look back like, there should have been a table or something in there, right? But I grew up with it that close, you know, a 2-bedroom home and the dining room. I mean, it was about maybe 6 feet away, you know. And I got a chance. They had rehearsals and all kinds of things in our front room. And so I got a chance to really just absorb all kinds of textures. And we know that jazz itself is diverse. You know, there's all kinds of things that are jazz. Wayne Shorter said, when asked what jazz is, he said, I mean, it means I dare you. You know, whatever it is, you know, so we're all making jazz. But yeah, that was a part of what I was privy to. My dad being a jazz musician and my mother being a choir director, it wasn't tension between them, but I knew, I could recognize that there was some conflict when people would learn that, oh, this person, I just don't want him to upstage me today. I'm not gonna say his name. This guy, no, JoFoKe is your dad. And your mom is a choir director? And I didn't understand, you know, I thought that was everyone's reality. Yeah, my dad, he's gonna be down at the clubs and and touring with Freddie Hubbard and Miles Davis. He's gonna be out here with these people that aren't necessarily churched. And so from the very beginning of my journey here on earth, I had an understanding that this was my reality, but it was odd to other people. It was offensive to some people. You know, some people were like, what? You know, because secular music, or circular, as, as one of my aunts would say, you sing that circular music? Yeah, so that secular versus sacred was really the battle. And I think once I first came to the realization that that was what that conflict was, when people would look at me or talk to me and have that understanding that my mother was a choir director, and she was kind of the reformed singer because she's no longer singing in those clubs with your heathen father. No. But really, that's honestly how people looked at it. You know, like, she's trying to bring him along. She's really trying to save his soul because he's playing that music that isn't of God, that music that isn't explicitly saying, come to Jesus. And so from the very beginning, when I understood that was the conflict, I had questions about faith. I didn't view it then as hate or as hate. But I knew that it was negative, and I didn't want to be that Christian because I knew how that made me feel. Like even as a child, I'm a child. And for those kinds of beliefs to be cast on me, it made me wonder, you know, is my dad really the devil, or is he doing the devil's work? What does that mean? This is how he's feeding us. This is, he's paying his tithes from that jazz money. So are you gonna give that back, or You know, I had so many questions about that. I've always been very inquisitive. My mother says, but you don't often ask the question. You got to start asking the questions. She used to say that. I could see your wheels turning. What is the question? What are the questions? You know, I'm more introspective. And so I have always been one to question what is truly what I believe or what we believe as the body of Christ, and what is just a part of this long game of telephone, you know, telling people what is of God and what isn't, what is acceptable as a Christian and what isn't. Is it okay to talk about your life in your art? Or is that because it falls under that circular category, is that wrong for me to talk about my life? Or is that okay? You know, is God displeased with me because I wrote a song about having ADHD? Or is he excited about that because that could be reaching someone, you know? And so that's still, I'm not confused on that now, but it is definitely something that I often discuss with either bandmates or friends from long ago. I have a childhood friend who, I guess it's been 5 years ago, she competed on Sunday Best. For those who don't know, Sunday Best is like it's like an American Idol for gospel. It's BET's version of American Idol, but it's gospel. And I mean, all the stars are on that, a who's who of gospel music. Donnie McClurkin, I believe in the beginning, B.B. Winans, Kirk Franklin Host, Yolanda Adams, Kim Burrell, Kiara Clark Sheard, some of the Clark sisters. I mean, it's a who's who of legendary gospel giants that do the judging and what have you of this show. And she won back in 2020 when I don't know if you heard about it. There was a pandemic, we couldn't leave. And so she won during that time. And I remember just watching from afar, watching her on social media, where people were praising her for pursuing this profession. However, they were saying, you know, and you didn't compromise your beliefs or your faith to sing that other bippity boppity and, you know, all the things that people say about secular music or secular artists. And I'm forever grateful. Her name is Stephanie Summers, and she lives right here in Denver. But she challenged that. Like, you know, what does that even mean? You know, what does that mean? I understand that there's music that can be destructive, but I would venture to say that there are some things that we can put in Christian music or gospel music that can also be destructive if it's not a true message of God's love. You know, if we wear that Christian title, right, and it means followers of Christ, we are taking on Christ's name and then being extra hateful with what we say. And when I say hate, I know that it just seems kind of harsh, but there is a violence that is attached to that word hate that is indeed informed by, or does indeed inform some of the things that we say. There's violence in those things that we say coming from our faith. And so bringing it back to my art. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and maybe you can explore this. Where do you think that desire for other comes from?
Kate is holding up a microphone. But the question was, where do I think the desire to other comes from? I think that is, I don't know if it's human nature. Yeah, I think it's human nature, because it's not just us. It's not just Christians. We won't be the only bad guys. But we have a tendency to kind of want to be more righteous than the other, you know? There's, I was in a boot camp, a workout group, and we were all so friendly until it was time to compete. Like, it was going down. I can run these stairs faster than you can. And it never was stated that it was a competition, but we wanted to best. We didn't want to not be the best, but we certainly didn't want to be the worst, you know? So I think it's just like it's human nature, or the lower nature, it's our flesh. I'm in a room full of Christians. You understand this vernacular. It's more of our flesh, our lower nature, and not our spiritual selves. You know, we have to aspire to be better, you know. Love is easy, but it's also hard, you know. And sometimes it's hard with the smallest task, because we don't see language or even in voicing our opinions, we don't see a lot of the things that we say and do as hateful or even violent. But yeah, there is, both of those things do apply to even, you know, the quietest quip at someone else's expense. It's violence. It's hateful. Great question from you, stranger lady that I do not know and did not graduate high school with. And so I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on, but that was the beginning of the questioning, and that was the start. And what is that? That being what my understanding the dichotomy or the paradox of having a jazz musician father, and a mother who was a choir director, who, by the way, had just left that jazz musician's band. I mean, she sang both pregnancies and everything with him, and hung it up when I was a little girl. However, it was the beginning of my understanding of my call, of the charge I had to be real in my music or in my art. I didn't know it was going to be music. I know that sounds odd, being surrounded by music, two parents who are musicians. I'm actually fourth generation professional musician, and I wanted to be a dancer. And I told my parents as much. I told my children's choir director, I'm a dancer. Please don't ask me to sing any more solos. But I understood my charge was to be real in my art and to do what I knew, what I felt inside was the right thing. Because I knew my dad wasn't bad. This is my daddy. What are you talking about? He's not bad. And he's not at church with us because he's out on the road. But I understood that, that was someone else's issue and not mine. But I'm going to advocate going forward. Of course, it wasn't that clear in my mind, but I knew there was something. I've always had that. And so I went on to enter the Denver School of the Arts it was called Denver School of the Arts at the time. And I was 11 when I got there. And no one in my elementary school knew that I sang or any of that. They knew I was a church girl. That was it. I was the quiet church girl, kept to myself, kept my head down. Nice, outgoing, kind of, if you knew me. But they had no idea that I was artistic at all. I danced with the dance teams and all the things that everybody did. We had to do square dancing and all of that. You all remember that? Yeah. Side note, Google the history of that if you didn't know about that. It was mandated that square dancing be a thing in public schools nationally. That's interesting. Anyhow, coming back. Don't go down that rabbit hole today. But so when it was announced at my 5th grade continuation that I was going to Denver School of the Arts, people were like, what are you gonna do? What is that about? And I initially was supposed to be a piano major, and my private piano teacher said, absolutely not. No, it's them or me. And again, it was because of that devil jazz. Because DSA at the time, Cole DSA, focused on jazz. It was either classical or jazz. And either way, she didn't want anybody polluting my mind with what was not the acceptable art. You see, there's a theme. There's a lot of vilifying, if you will, of some of the art. But she didn't like any of it. She didn't want me to play gospel. She didn't want me to play jazz. And she didn't want someone else that she didn't know to tell me what to do with the classical side of things. And so my father said, well, let's just try it. You want to try vocal? Because they were really pushing to get children into the Denver School of the Arts, artistic children. And I had, been performing and doing all the things. And so, yeah, we went on and said, yeah, let's try voice. But, I really do think I should try dance, because I'm gonna be a dancer. And I'd been surrounded by dance. Mama Cleo will be here next week, but Cleo Parker Robinson, she and my dad go way back. He was her first musical director, long before I was born. And my bonus mother was a dancer. I took dance at her studio. So I was, I just knew, I'm gonna be a dancer. But we'll try out this vocal music thing here at Cole DSA. And I fell in love with the art. I had my first vocal lesson ever when I was 11. And I remember that lesson like I could probably act it out for you. I remember just a whole new world opening for me. And there were things as far as music theory I understood already, because my dad taught me ledger lines and grand staff and all of those things as I learned the alphabet. He taught me the musical alphabet and, and counting and all of that. And patterns. Do I have any fellow neurodivergent people in the room? Yeah, so patterns and numbers and things, my jam. I could, quickly pick up on that kind of thing and not even understand how I understood and what I understood. And so with the powers that be at DSA, at least in the vocal music department, knowing that I had just started lessons, they had questions about how I was grasping things so quickly, and how, like when we had written work, I was excelling, and take into consideration that I had been in piano and theory and from a musical family. And so I was actually accused of cheating. Yeah, but how do you cheat? How, this is the practical side of things. If I'm doing this in practice, if I am performing in this way, how am I cheating? And then I met a lot of resistance anytime I would bring in something that was I don't want to say that originated from African Americans, because there's a lot that originated from African Americans, but what stereotypically was African American music anytime that was brought in. So even if I brought in a Negro spiritual, there would be some kind of mark against me. And this is where jazz and gospel and R&B and all of those things, all of those, again, stereotypically Black forms of music began to be vilified or were vilified. And I couldn't understand what that was. I was being told that, that's not art. That's not art, or that's not acceptable, or you can do that kind of thing on the weekend. This is the real scholastic. This is the true art. This is the true form. And I'm sure that many of you, this isn't news to many of you, that you've witnessed this. If it's not classical, we even have young Einstein. If you're playing classical music for your children, that means they're going to be the most intelligent, the most receptive, most successful, And so that was, I didn't understand what pain that was, but I knew that it was confusing. It was confusing because if all of this is lighting up my life, if singing the sweetest sounds from Cinderella and singing it artistically, singing it as an art song, or classically, lit up my life just as much as singing it like the Nancy Wilson recording of it that obviously had a little more bump to it. If they lit up my life the same, if they were fulfilling me to the same degree, maybe in a different way, then how? How is one art and one not? How is improvisation? How is the expression of faith? How is the expression of love? Irrespective of what kind of love, how is that bad? So again, more of the questions. and more smoke coming out of my ears because I wasn't saying them, I wasn't voicing those questions. But, I sat with a lot of that. I promise I'm going somewhere with all of this. But it really, going through all of these things and getting the questions about, or having the questions about what made art wrong, what side of, what makes this wrong? I mean, I'm not out here cussing people out. I'm not, telling people to go and hurt someone. I am just talking about life and talking about my hopes and my dreams. And I'm singing about my faith and the Savior that I want to see again someday. These things, what made that not acceptable art or bad art? I will fast forward to when I got to Denver, or not Denver School of the Arts, when I got to East High School. I was one of the students to opt into going to East High as opposed to going to Manual to continue with Denver School of the Arts. And at the last minute, my dad said, do you really want to stay in the School of the Arts? You've had kind of a rough time. And I hear what Will Taylor is doing over there with the vocal music department is incredible. Would you be okay with just being an East High student, being a regular student? I said, wait, like with sports and everything? Absolutely, let's do it. I can go to real school. Just kidding, not real school. But yeah, I was one of many students that ended up making that choice because we had all experienced a great pushback when it came to trying to bring our culture into our scholastic environment. There were so many questions about, even our taste in music, or, and of course we had some good, no one was bad, but of course we had some faculty to champion our cause, who would, bring in music. I had one accompanist. His name was Tom Sublett. I don't know where Mr. Sublett is, but he was awesome. He would bring in sheet music for songs that he knew that I liked. He would, he'd hunt it down. Do I remember the Casey Kasem Top 40 Countdown? I don't know if you remember that they had books. They had sheet music books that would come out every year of those top 40. And it'd say May, June, whatever month it was. And he bought several of those books for, not just for me, but for those of us who were like, yeah, I love this song. One of them had I Get Around by Tupac, which was so cool to me because it was like, I can see this. I can actually see it charted out. Like, this is amazing. But that, so I had some glimmers. But even in that, he didn't have enough authority for that to be implemented, for those things to be implemented. So it was really on lunch breaks and whenever I could have private time to explore those things. And so East offered freedom, a little more freedom. And so once I got there, I knew I'm not singing anything else classically. I'm not, forget this technique. And Mr. Taylor, William Taylor, said, absolutely not. If you can do all of this, let's do all of this. And that was the first time that really opened up for me. Like, I don't have to just choose one. I can do all of the things. That's so cool. Are you so, like, what do you mean by that? Like, when? So do I just have to meet you at lunchtime if I'm gonna do? But no, like, he really did make it a safe place for us to explore the artistry of the true artistry and musicianship and really even understand what it was that we were doing musically in gospel, in R&B, to really understand the side of theory in those things, and I finally got it, that music isn't bad. It's just not bad. And then I feel like my wind is long, so I'm going to try and fast forward. I got to Fisk University, which, for those who don't know, Fisk University is the best place this side of heaven. No, I really do love my alma mater. It is a historically black college, and with rich history. It was formed in 1855, opened for 1865, formed for newly freed, formerly enslaved black people and children. I hate saying illegitimate, but children of former slaveholders. And it opened on January 9th, 1866, as the Fisk Free School for the Colored in Nashville, Tennessee. The original location was Union Army Barracks. And 5 years later, the Fisk Jubilee Singers, it was a group of 9 singers, were able to tour the world and raise enough money to purchase the land on which Fisk sits now and erect the Jubilee Hall, which is a beautiful, if you're ever in Nashville and get a chance, go and visit Fisk. Beautiful campus with such rich history. And I was blessed to be a member of the Jubilee Singers and tour the world as a Jubilee singer. And majority of us identified as Christian. And then there were some who didn't. And I remember feeling as though we were excluding those people who didn't have the same faith. I felt, I guess as my generation would say, I felt some kind of way about it. Like we were ostracizing, and we weren't. We weren't shunning, we weren't, fussing or even preaching at those who weren't Christian. But it just felt like when it was time for us to pray, or when we were sharing our faith, and that there wasn't space for them to even say what they wanted to say, maybe about life, or if it was the universe for them, or if it was Allah for them. And so that was another time where those questions came in. Like, how, why, and how can I let my sister, my non-Christian sister, know that she is indeed my sister, and I don't see anything wrong with how she lives her life and what she practices. I just want to love. You know, the Bible says we are to owe no man anything but to love. And I've always wanted to pass on love. And here we are making this beautiful music. We're expressing this beautiful, beautiful art all over the globe. And we're spreading this message of love, but kind of excluding her, kind of excluding him from the experience of this love. So again, more questions in that. And at the end of college, I don't think Adam knows this. I know Ellen does know this. At the end of college, I attempted suicide. It was my first semester of my senior year. And I mean, everyone kept saying, "What happened? I mean, what's going on? Are you not gonna graduate?" You know, people look for reasons, and you know, I had been dealing with a lot of stuff. Again, remember I mentioned I don't ask the question, I don't voice things. I'm going to implode, if anything. It's not necessarily going to be an explosion, but that was an explosion. And at that time, I had a friend to get so mad at me. She was angry. And this just doesn't get easy. I always cry. But I'm okay? I had a friend, she was big mad at me. And it was her behavior toward me that made me feel the anger, feel the rage. And so I, asked her about it. We were roommates, we're still touring. Once I got back to touring and what have you. I mean, this is my best friend at the school. And she was so angry. I said, now, what's the issue? What is the problem? And we millennials kind of, when we respond to confrontation, oftentimes we say, "I just think it's funny that." And she said, "I just feel like it's weird, it's funny, it's fake that you say that you believe in God and you would do that. That you say your faith is what it is and you would do that. You're not a Christian." She revoked. She revoked my Christianity card because of that, because of my battle, my struggle with mental illness. Again, I'm okay. And we are okay. That friendship is probably stronger than it's ever been. But there was the question of that question And of course, I was the target. And so I felt so strange about feeling that. I felt so strange about someone I loved. Oh, and I love her down. I love her. I felt so othered and so invalidated, so unnecessary. And so that, again, I guess began my deconstructing. And I don't know if many of you have heard that term, deconstructing, as it pertains to faith. I think I've been on a path of deconstruction for the last at least 22 years. That was 22 years ago. I've been on that path where I am deconstructing those long-held beliefs that were a part of that long game of telephone. You know, the things that we have sort of memorialized and made tradition. I come from a family of preachers, Baptist preachers, and one of my uncles was talking about how we will often have a celebration and it go over so well that we want to canonize it. Now it's going to be National Ushers Day. Every year, we're going to celebrate the ushers and what they did last year. And there are a lot of things that we do as the body of Christ where it's like, is this really necessary? And not that we shouldn't be celebrating ushers. I love you, ushers. I used to be one of you. I was a junior usher. I was horrible at it, but my heart was willing. My skill was weak. But we have a tendency, and I won't just put that on Christians, to say this is what's acceptable, this is what's culturally acceptable, this is what's right, and this is, if you disagree with any of this, if you go against any of this, you are bad, you are wrong. And so, be it having a jazz musician dad and a choir director mother, or going to school to only study the true art of classical, but on the weekends, singing at church and in talent shows and doing all the things that are not art, or having a breakdown, or being a Christian. All of this informs my art. All of this informs my spirituality. It all informs my faith. I definitely have faith in God. I definitely am grateful to God for life, health, strength, breath in my body. I'm a worship leader, so I'm often saying, I thank God for the activity of my limbs, as I'm exhorting and trying to bring the people to sing. But it's true, a lot of these things sound cliche. I actually wrote a song that the first line says, "For waking me up this morning, it sounds cliche." And then it goes on to say some of those things. But I truly do have that faith, and I'm steadily investigating that faith. But in my faith, it's always drenching my art. Adam jokes with me that I preached when we were at Red Rocks a few years ago. He said, I didn't expect you to preach. I said, I was just talking to the people. I don't even remember what I said. I just remember that I was preaching. And I bring that up because that is very much how I perform. It's very much how I write. It's very much my mode of operation on stage. I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Has anyone been to any of my shows before? Yeah. Oh, wow, yay! I've got some fans. No. Perhaps I will give a sample. I'm gonna keep talking until I get this lump down in my throat. I don't think you want to hear anything vocally with that. But at those shows, I'm sure that these people can attest. I'm preaching. My faith is evident, even if I don't say Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. But it's also evident in ways that aren't traditionally what one would think of preaching. One thing that I'm always talking about is body positivity and being grateful for the body that you have now, in this moment. And I fluctuate. My weight has always fluctuated and what have you. I think it's important that we say, God gave me this body. And irrespective of where it is right now, my body is not and is never an apology. I'm going to give glory to God for what he has made, what he has given me. I'm going to do my best to take care of what I have right now in this moment and love on it. That's a part of taking care of it. There's also I don't know if you've heard, there are people who don't like the way black people's hair grows from their head. And a lot of them are black people because we were told for so long it wasn't acceptable. So how Dr. Newton and I have shown up with natural form in a lot of places, that's still not acceptable, to the point where we've had to have laws. I think it was actually this week, 5 years ago, that Colorado adopted the Crown Act, where we couldn't be discriminated against because of how our hair grows from our heads. Again, another part of my art that I consider to be ministry. In showing to the little black girl, your hair is beautiful just how it is. And if you choose to straighten it, if you choose to put a wig on, whatever that is, you are beautiful how God created you. If he created you and you have that desire to wear that wig, wear it, sister. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of how you choose to show up in this world. There's one other big example that I left out. The beginning of late 80s, early 90s, for a lot of us, I know the AIDS epidemic hit hard. I lost 3 relatives to that disease. And I can remember when one who I was very close to died in July of 1996. Another friend, and again, we're good now, but a friend asked me if this relative was gay. I said, yeah, he was. And she said, dang, it's really a shame he went to hell. What? And I was 14. He died, yeah, I was 14 and a half. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart. And right after that, there was a choir that I was singing in. And do you all remember when Colorado was the hate state? Because I don't know, even though it didn't pass, we were the first state to have gay marriage on any ballot. And we were the first state. And it didn't pass, but we were dubbed the hate state by many gay organizations. And I remember that the choir director of this choir that I loved so much said something publicly about gays going to hell and it being, and their da-da-da-da-da, all the things, all of the radical hate, the radically hateful language that we often hear about the Q community. And I quietly walked away from that choir, but I never said anything. I didn't even really have this conversation with my parents until I was an adult. But wondering about my faith, how is it that we are called to love and provide for one another, lend to one another, and we exhibit such hate? How is that? And why is that? Also, why bring that same choir to said relative's celebration of life to sing? Again, that's one of the things I've internalized, that I don't want to be that Christian, and I don't ever want anyone to mistake me for that Christian. I don't want to be that artist that is so fearful of what the backlash might be that I won't speak up on behalf of other communities, of my community, but of that community in particular, because they're different. I know I don't have the authority to tell somebody that they're not worthy of God's love, because that's not a thing. It's just not a thing. And so, again, I'm sure that these people who have been to see us perform know that we spread love. I know you have to leave, Adam. It's okay. It's I know, me and my preaching. And I'm going to wrap this up because I'm singing at the next service. And we want to get there, don't we? What I will say is that I hope that, and there are so many other things, that I could talk about. I will just have to come back. I didn't even touch on the intersectionality of being Black and a woman, and yikes. Yeah, that might have to be after dark. But no, I will say that I'm very grateful to be back at home with Montview, to share this. I know you all are used to me singing and hearing my voice in a different way, and the lump still has not gone anywhere. But it will be, I'm sure I'll be fine for the 11:30 service. 11 o'clock, we gotta go. Ooh, we gotta get out of here. But I will, my takeaway is that, of course, we know I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But later on in Ephesians 3, God can do anything, far more than you can imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. And that is true. And with what we've discussed today, that is the belief that I've held in all of these situations, or reflecting on all these situations, to know that I can love radically because God can do this through me. I can bless someone who is feeling othered because of their sexuality, who is feeling othered because the world tells you that how you naturally are Black, how your existence is politicized, irrespective of if you want to be involved or not, you are political. I can reach those people. I can minister to those people. And bless myself in the process. I know I gotta get out of here. I do see one hand back there. Yes, ma'am. Okay. I know we do. I'm sorry, my wind was so long, but if you're gonna be at the next service in 1 minute, no, I am singing. I'm blessed to be singing with the choir this morning.
We'll have you come back. We thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No, I was